Welcome to Monograph Matters. I'm talking today with Catherine Ann Cameron and Bruce Homer, authors of the SRCD Monograph on fostering prosociality in refugee children and intervention with Rohingya children. This discussion focuses on the impact of research to educational supports. So, Anne and Bruce, how might the research inform supports within refugee camps? And how do you see applications from the research that could be used by educators to bring awareness of refugee lives to student researchers in the global north?
Thanks. Very interesting question. I think there's several things that we can learn from this work. First of all, one of the most important aspects is the involvement of the community. And so this was not a project that went in without first meeting with members of the community, the parents, educators who were there within the camps, and talking to them about what the needs were of the children, and also what would be culturally appropriate interventions, and then having their involvement in designing and implementing the actual interventions. So this work couldn't have happened without involving stakeholders and hearing their voices as part of designing and implementing this work. I think another important lesson that comes from this is we use technology, but we also used low-tech solutions as well. So some of the measures that we used involved folding paper, and some of the intervention was playing inexpensive board games and just having kids work together. And even the technology we used ran on the cheapest tablets that we could find. So it was not a super high-tech intervention, but it was informed by the research, thinking about what types of activities would really support the children's learning and promotion of prosociality in the kids. And I guess finally, one of the sort of important things for me out of all this was realizing the resiliency of the children who were involved. So even before we started doing the intervention, we saw that these kids had quite high levels of prosociality, especially given the trauma and negative experiences that they had gone through. So taking this sort of strength-based approach and realizing that humans are basically kind, and we need to build on that, and kids are quite resilient, and let kids play, let kids be together. The importance of the families came through as well. So these are, build with community strengths, understand that there's positive impact of having the community involvement. You need that, and you don't need a super high-tech solution. You just need a solution that's going to allow children to engage in the activities that is going to support their cognitive development and learning.
Nicely said, Bruce. And I just want to maybe expand that gaze to think about the rest of us in the North, and think about the fact that this exciting monograph has so many contributions that it can make to the development of developmental science, developmental psychology, and the understanding of human development. Because in fact, here we have worked with children and families and community members who are not those weird folks that we have spent so much time, the Western educated, etc. people, but are working with communities, as you've emphasized, and in fact, in this case, Rohingya refugee families and community workers. And in exploring in a culturally sensitive way about the prosocial behavior of these children, I think we've broadened our general understanding of human development and prosociality. The Rohingya children were in a refugee camp which had an environment that we can't really even imagine when we look at the visuals. It is so complicated and challenging. And I think it's really important that the camps have first and foremost the health, the safety and health of the children, and their psychosocial development has to take a lower priority. So we were very lucky that we were able to get there and work with the children at the level of their prosociality. And what we found, lo and behold, was a good news story. I attribute a lot to I'm doing a day in the life work with some of the children with one of the researchers there, and the commitment of their parents to protect the children on an hourly, daily basis, despite all the adversity, really brings to mind the work of in resilience about what the ordinary magic is that allows children to survive despite adversity. So this was a context that none of us would want children to be in. But the good news was, and is right now, and this monograph is going to highlight that, just how well the children are surviving and possibly even thriving despite the context. So I think that that is really important. So those lessons, I think, go to our students who say, yes, we've been studying weird people, but the processes are very much the same. And it's interesting how the contexts can be found even in rocks and pebbles and in gravel and sticks, that the children will find ways. And then, of course, we also saw a few lower level engagements that we think we could enhance over the course of some training. And the training results that we found were, in fact, that the older children and the more adept children learnt more. And so thinking in terms of the children who have more challenges, and the fact that it's all the more the case, and it does seem to be the case, that with children who are out earning a living, as opposed to being able to be in school because they only have one parent in the camp or whatever, that those children deserve even more support. So the idea of supporting the families and the community and the people who are working with the refugee camps, give them support, is really critical to us in the West.
So I think another thing that was exciting about this work is it really supports this approach to playful learning that my colleagues and I have been trying to do in our work with using technology for education. And so in a prior project with refugees in Turkey, we used playful learning, which involved digital games that we developed to teach certain cognitive skills, a playful approach to teaching language and teaching coding, and some other things called Project Hope. We found a positive effect on all these outcomes. And so found kids who were taking this playful joint approach to solving games, solving puzzles together, it had this benefit. And it goes back to what educators have known for a long time, that play is good for kids. And that's one of the most natural ways of learning. And as psychologists, sometimes we keep proving things that, let's say, educators like my mother, who is an early childhood educator, has known since the 70s, but it's great to find evidence of supporting that and seeing it applied in these difficult conditions that these children were living in. So let kids play.
Yeah. Yeah, we knew it even before the 70s. Really back in the day, we knew that play was kids' work. And when they have a chance to work, they learn and they give. And I guess that's one of the things that I found pretty exciting about this, was that there were higher levels of generosity in the children who had experienced higher levels of trauma. And that really seemed pretty poignant to us researchers, to know that these children they had been born in their home country, and then they come to the camps. And while their levels of empathy were hugely impressive, and almost more so than the children who had been born in the camp. Now they had been living the same amount of time, but the earlier arrival children had very high levels of empathy, when they talked about how they felt about characters in the scenarios that we gave them. On the other hand, when it came to deciding practical applications of that, what would you do? They were not as fulsome as the children who had been born in camp. So we could see some differences in terms of levels of trauma, in terms of what we were extrapolating as levels of trauma between the group that had been born in camp and the group that had been born in Myanmar. So those are very rough indices, but what we found so much was the strength of the children and how it acted out in slightly different ways. But we were overwhelmed with the capacity of all the children to learn something from our games, the low tech, the high tech, paper folding, and all kinds of things that were designed to engage them, and they benefited from those. So, the parents and the communities are trying to be doing that. We hope that our work will help them in their efforts to do that and allow for support from the larger global community to help people who are working with children in refugee camps to know that, that if we can enable the children to play, then they'll work to be better citizens for the community. But one final thing that I have thought about is we only work with children up to pre-puberty. We know that there are kids that are pubertal in the camps. And we know from other research that very often we focus on the early development, which I'm all in favor of, but it is also the case that those teenagers probably deserve some attention. Because if they're not engaged in the kind of play and work that's normally the case for children in their teenage years, they could go off track. Now, we have no data on that, but it is something that really interests me in terms of thinking that we had research assistants who were helping the children to play. And it is possible that in future work, what we could be doing is engaging the teenagers as play instructors, as play facilitators, to engage them so that when they became adults, they would be helpers and empathic in the same way that the little ones are able to be. That was just a piece that I've been thinking about recently.
Read more about this topic in the monograph issue, Fostering Prosociality in Refugee Children, an Intervention with Rohingya Children by Tara Callaghan, Tyler.colasante, Saifullah Muhammad et al. If you like this video, consider watching our Monograph Matters playlist. For additional resources related to this and other issues of the monograph of the Society for Research in Child Development, please visit monographmatters.srcd.org.